But so yeah, so what we're going to be talking about is we're going to talk some about the technology, some about the strategies, some about the policies, and that's sort of the three-legged stool that really seems to be that we really seem to need to focus on with cybersecurity. So here's who we have with us. So on the far end, we have Matt Connor from the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. Matt is the Chief Information Security Officer and Director of the Cybersecurity Office at NGA. He also serves as the Occupation Manager for the cybersecurity workforce. And then we have Mitchell Komarov from the Department of Defense. Mitchell is the Principal Advisor for Cybersecurity Strategy, Planning and Oversight, and the Deputy CIO for Cybersecurity. And in this role, he develops plans to manage DoD's portfolio of cybersecurity enterprise capabilities. And next we have Chris Woloshin from the Department of Health and Human Services. Chris is the Chief Information Security Officer at HHS, as well as the Executive Director of the Office of Information Security. And then we have Lauren Burnell. Lauren is the Chief Information Security Officer and Engineering Services Manager for PCMG. She's responsible for developing and directing end-to-end security programs and solutions for government customers. And I'd note that prior to joining PCMG, Lauren served as a U.S. Navy Cryptologic Warfare Officer, specializing in cyberspace operations, signal intelligence, electronic warfare, and data analytics. So as you can see, we have a lot of expertise here. But how I'd like to begin is to ask each of our panelists to sort of just take a couple minutes to talk about the work that they do. Where are they focusing their energies? Kind of what's kind of driving them right now? And then we'll dive into the questions. So Matt, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the agency just in case people don't have any context for the discussion. The National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency is headquartered in Springfield, Virginia, and one of the big 5 intelligence agencies. We provide surprisingly, geospatial intelligence products to warfighters, decision makers, really the entire national system and allied systems for GeoInt. So what we like to say is that everything happens in a place and time on the Earth, and we intend to know more about it than anybody else. And that gives decision makers, warfighters, information superiority. We have a partnership with the National System for GeoInt, which means across the community, academia, industry. We partner with GeoInt providers, GeoInt analysts, those kinds of things. In the cybersecurity office specifically, there's a couple of key focus areas. Our director has challenged us to succeed in the open, something I've talked about in various settings. And what he means by that is increasingly our partners, our consumers of our data are in non-traditional spaces, at least for an intelligence agency. So that means on the World Wide Web, open internet, and public-private partnerships with academia. We have a Silicon Valley office now that sort of underscores how we're reaching out to non-traditional partners for an intelligence agency. And what he wants to do is push GeoInt closer to the hands of the consumers in the places and spaces that they want. In general, as a cybersecurity office, I liked the earlier speaker. We are looking to integrate, we are looking to accelerate, looking to automate. How many people have heard of the ATO in a day speech from NGA? Many? Any? A few? Okay. So a big initiative that we're working to accelerate the assessment and authorization process, speed time, reduce time to market or reduce time to deploying capability. Huge investment area and focus areas for now.
Mitchell.
So in my capacity as I'm an advisor to the Deputy CIO for Cybersecurity, who's Ms. Essie Miller. I'm myself, I'm not in the CISO. But as an advisor to the CISO, I think it's good to get a sense that so the Department of Defense, as I think the last question to Dennis Barco kind of was driving at, is a pretty big and unwieldy place. So basically, in addition to 4 very large services and 9 combatant commands, we have numerous agencies and field activities operating over multiple worldwide networks at different classification levels, tens of thousands of operational systems, millions of computer devices. So in an organization that large, the CISO of the department, working in the office of the DoD CIO, is responsible for essentially the cybersecurity program of the Department of Defense to ensure that proper cybersecurity functionality is being integrated into those systems and networks that I mentioned, and to assure that proper configuration is maintained over that infrastructure, and working very closely with Cyber Command that those systems are operated in a secure fashion. So ultimately then in that role, we're pretty far away from the details of the technology, but are working to try and achieve processes that do what I think Dennis aptly described, properly achieving integration across the cybersecurity program of the department, and doing so in an agile fashion, but at the same time trying to achieve that understanding that we can, as best as we can get from the height of the Office of the Secretary of Defense, that those programs are being implemented.
Chris.
Well, good morning, and thank you to the moderator and to our hosts for putting on such a fine event. I see lots of familiar faces in the crowd, many of them friendly. That's good to see. At HHS, I'm going to talk two directions. First, inside HHS and the exciting things that are going on there, and then outside HHS and what we're trying to do for the healthcare sector. You may or may not know that HHS is comprised of 11 operating divisions, about 20 staff and support divisions. We operate on about a $1.1 trillion budget. That includes all of our spend and grants that we make to departments, agencies, state and local government. Last year we spent about $14 billion on IT, about $315 million on IT security. So think of the different missions of the HHS operating division, starting with the Food and Drug Administration, working with Big Pharma to secure and make safe prescription drugs. Medical device manufacturers to make all those devices that are present in hospitals and at a point of care safe. Protecting incredible amounts of intellectual property that, if stolen, could drastically affect the futures of a large number of organizations. Move to CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid. They process about $1 million a minute in payments to patients, providers, and payers. Their cybersecurity problem is one about fraud detection and making sure that those payments go where they're supposed to and not where they don't. The Centers for CDC and NIH, National Institutes of Health, and Centers for Disease Control, working on curing cancer and preventing the spread of Ebola. And they do that through large international partnerships with researchers and medical staff all over the world, a very open and sharing environment. It's quite different from the cybersecurity challenges at FDA and CMS. So it's an exciting time to be in federal IT. I'm excited to be at HHS. Why? Because we have an incredibly complex challenge to leverage our vendor partners, who I'm trying to change the lexicon. We're calling you strategic partners now. Government can't do this by ourselves. Leveraging our vendor partners to help our operating divisions serve the American people and deliver the promise of health and welfare for all Americans. HHS touches about 110 million American citizens, PHI and PII. I suggest that maybe some people in this room, or even a family member that you may have, is influenced in some way, shape, or form by what HHS does. We have an incredible mission. We have a very talented team that are trying to execute that cyber mission, and we rely heavily on our vendor partners, our strategic partners, to get that cybersecurity mission done. Looking out of HHS into the healthcare sector, we have an incredible responsibility as a sector-specific agency, an SSA, working in very close collaboration with the Department of Homeland Security, who has the national mission for protecting the critical infrastructures, working closely with DHS to make sure that the healthcare sector is aware and prepared for cybersecurity issues that may befall them. Think of a large-scale cybersecurity incident affecting a big swath of a certain kind of medical device, or perhaps preventing hospitals from intaking patients into emergency rooms, preventing of clinicians from accessing medical records. It's a huge responsibility to make sure that the public health sector is ready for those kinds of threats. HHS has been doing this a long time in other areas of threats to public health, thinking like pandemics and floods and typhoons, et cetera. So cyber is another component that we're working on, and we're excited to be doing it.
Great. And Lauren?
All right, excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's an honor to be here representing industry, so one of these things is not like the other on this panel. But as mentioned, in my previous life, served in the Navy, Naval Academy grad, did tours at the NSA doing a cyber mission there, as well as was a battle watch captain during the Navy's first named cyber defense operation. So moving from active duty, working cyber warfare into industry, my focus and carrying over into my organization has been to take a true mission-first approach. And really what that's led us to is three different kind of areas where I think that government truly needs industry to step up and step to the table to partner to solve very critical cybersecurity and IT challenges. So they actually really align with the digital government strategy that was put out in 2012. So the three tenets of that strategy first was around procurement. So both how do we improve innovation, things like, and actually we're working with the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, DIUX, but how do we both improve acquisition strategy to get innovative technologies into the mission faster, as well as a subject that we are very focused on, which is how do we secure those acquisitions. So I think we'll touch on IT supply chain security in the course of this discussion, and ensuring that that critical attack vector and vulnerability area is properly addressed. The second area is around mobility, so both enabling the American citizens as well as a more agile workforce to have access to the data, the critical information that they need anytime, anywhere, from any device. So we've definitely very focused on secure mobility, both for tactical missions, office environments, and actually the title of this panel I think really relates to some of the work that we're doing there with government and DIUX around how security innovations can make a difference and actually save lives. The third area is around analytics. So I think, ensuring that we're able to use and make better decisions, right? Because at the end of the day, if we're not using data and all of this technology to actually empower the warfighter and help the decision maker, then what was the point of introducing it into the mission in the first place? So those are the three kind of general areas where we're really working and we're seeing kind of from an industry perspective as where government needs these are critical challenges for government and areas where in private sector there are, emerging technologies and solutions that can make a massive difference to the government mission. And so the onus is on us to step up to the plate and ensure that we're partnering effectively to get that into the mission.
Okay, good. So let's dive in, and I think I'm kind of sort of following up on Lauren. Let's begin by talking about pain points. What do you now see as the primary cyber pain points that in your agency or in government as a whole? Where are those pain points? Matt, you want to begin?
Sure. My first thought when you said that was from the perspective of our customers, our programs, internally or externally, and I can answer it in lots of different ways.
However you want to answer it.
Sure enough. The person who kicked off the discussion, Dennis, talked about speed. I spend a lot of time talking to folks internally and externally about the speed of solutions, right? The speed of cybersecurity. People want an informed contextual risk decision about whatever outcome they're trying to achieve. And security as a discipline, or at least in the federal space, or maybe more specifically in my agency, speed is a growth area for us. Moving at the speed of mission is actually part of now our mission statement. Our programs, our operators, our customers, they want solutions, capability, fielded, operational as quickly as possible, of course, and we simply cannot follow the old ways of reaching that contextual risk decision. So I mentioned earlier the ATO in a day activity, and that is a very specific, very targeted, and very important activity for us to try to reduce time to market for capabilities, because speed is what people want. And especially in today's world, especially people who come from industry to government are just stunned by the speed of our decisions, or maybe the absence thereof. So definitely a pain point for us is to accelerate cybersecurity solutions.
Okay, good. Mitchell, how about you?
I think that
in thinking about generally pain points, it's kind of the things that are impeding, broad progress, say, on the front. And so I think that the principal one, or one of the top ones facing the department, is the very size, scope, and complexity of the department, and the fact that we're organized around being able to make decisions in a decentralized fashion. And many of our processes are oriented around making decisions about particular systems. So then the challenge becomes, from the standpoint of the Office of the Secretary, of being able to achieve the kind of integration that the first speaker talked about across the entire department. So that's also tied with a certain lag, what I would call the legacy installed base that we face, and the fact that those decentralized decisions make it difficult to move out with the kind of periodicity or regularity that allows you to maintain a current technology install base, as opposed to an install base that limits your options from the standpoint of cybersecurity. I'd say those are the two big ones.
All right, Chris.
Inside HHS, our pain points include high-value assets, legacy IT. The cyber EO brought into crystal clear focus for us and for other departments and agencies the need to go after our biggest risks. The former federal CISO, Greg Toohill, had a lot of great ideas. One of them was taking the risk-based decision approach to cyber. We're going to focus our investments on those areas of high risk. And for HHS, those are high-value assets and legacy IT. We're really going after them. Secondarily, within HHS is a workforce issue that I think we're all experiencing. Just not enough good cyber people to go around. So we're partnering with industry. We're partnering with educational institutions that are accredited by NSA and others to develop a groundswell of grassroots cybersecurity talent pool that we can tap into. Outside of HHS, we're really focused on those small and medium and rural providers. I would ask the audience to think of the hometown where you grew up. Might be one or two doctors' offices, a couple of physicians or medical staff in there. Definitely not an IT staff, and certainly not a security person. And think of those folks trying to ingest cyber threat intelligence or apply best practices. You're lucky if one of the office staff members changes the toner on the copier, or maybe applies some patches after her or his shift is over at the end of the day. So we're really focusing on the small and medium and rural providers who are least able to help themselves, and give them some best practices, some playbooks that they can use to provide a minimum level of protection. And in doing so, raise the whole healthcare sector up when it comes to cyber awareness and preparedness.
Okay, good. And Lauren, from where you sit, you got kind of a broad view. Where do you see those pain points?
Yeah, so I think that across public sector, actually the three that I just highlighted are kind of the broad, and so I'd like to anchor on IT supply chain security, because I think that when it comes to cybersecurity solutions, we often just look very tactical, right? So we think network perimeter and our endpoint, and there's so many endpoint solutions out there, and what about web and email and all these different solutions, which are extremely important to have in your environment, right? But what about, this picture around acquisition security, right? Because at the end of the day, all an adversary has to do to get onto a government, even classified network, is be the lowest bidder, right? So IT supply chain security is really around ensuring that you have confidence in the integrity of the IT assets that you're introducing into your environment. I think that historically there's been a fundamental disconnect between industry and government. So government obviously is focused on mission, right? You're focused on mission success, and so that has, we're now adopting and understanding that cybersecurity is critical, right? Because this information warfare domain is a true warfighting domain. IT can be used as a weapon with kinetic effects. It needs to be procured accordingly, right? So I think government's there. Industry has looked at, IT acquisitions from an industry perspective, where we're looking at efficiency, cost savings, and how fast can we roll things out. So that's really, the traditional the supply chain chain risk management, or SCRM, I think was really more focused on these kind of industry concerns around supply chain. And so we've just started to see the emergence, and NIST is a leader, and industry is coming to the table and partnering with government in cyber supply chain risk management, right? Which is really looking at how do we ensure that counterfeit IT, so fake, and that's scary for your mission, because if it's critical infrastructure and your core backbone, then it's going to fail when your mission needs it most. Or gray market, right? So that means it didn't go through its proper channels in delivery to you, and is far more likely to be tampered with and potentially malicious. So think of nation-state adversaries that are viewing this global IT supply chain as an easy access point, right? Because there are systemic problems, unfortunately, with how we do procurements and partnerships that kind of open us up to this. So I think it's a really important consideration in kind of a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity in your environment. When we think about visibility, absolutely visibility of the network is essential, but we also have to ensure that we have visibility into our processes, right? And into our people, and how we're doing things that bring the IT into our environment.
Okay, good. So I want to dig down a little deeper on one point, and that is technology. There's been so many advances in cyber-related technology over the last couple years. And I guess my question to the panel is, to what extent do you see recent technology advances helping you to address your pain points? Where do you see that promise or not? Who would like to start?
Well,
Mitchell.
I think that from the standpoint of where I sit, most of the problems that we've been facing are not the kinds of things that are that there's going to be a technology silver bullet that's going to lift us out. I mean, in general, I think that there are pervasive improvements in technology. For instance, the quality of operating systems within the computers, their leveraging of hardware root of trust. One of the ways that we've been seeking to deal with the problem of decentralization and the legacy install base is through making certain enterprise decisions. So beginning with the CIO, the former CIO, Mr. Halverson, and the new CIO, Dr. Zangardi, we've been pressing forward with Secure Host Baseline, Win10 Secure Host Baseline rollout across the entire department, and that's being handled at an enterprise level, driven from the highest levels, to ensure that all the components have a plan in place to meet the very short deadlines. Similarly, whereas we had historically managed our firewalls in a very decentralized way through the component purchases for firewalls at, essentially for each base post camp station, we made a decision to manage them regionally and stood up the joint regional security stacks, which again achieve focus, allowing the department to leverage state-of-the-art in the kind of filtering that can be done through firewalls, but we're managing not only at the perimeter but also at interior points through these regional security stacks. So those are two instances where we've tried to manage the pain points. They're leveraging the emergent technologies, but importantly, they're managing them at an enterprise level.
Well, yeah, let's follow up on that enterprise level, because that does seem to be one of the big shifts we've seen in the last 2 years, where suddenly cybersecurity is being kind of driven from the top down. Is this the way to go? Is this necessary at this point? Matt, what do you think?
I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it effectively any other way. From a risk aggregation perspective, from a transitive trust perspective, from the risk assumed by one segment is shared by all. If you're not looking at it from an enterprise perspective, you are destined to fail. Both from a risk that we incur, but also from the ability to apply solutions. We're working real hard on enterprise security services. Enterprise security services, things like identity and access management, enterprise audit, enterprise analytics, those kinds of things. give us that holistic risk picture, and NIST and FSMA mandate a risk executive function for a whole of agency perspective. We're trying to extract all the different the intelligence we have about different segments of our network, enclaves, environments, and present a holistic risk picture. When I talk to the director, he doesn't want to know about this discrete system or that discrete enclave or this operating location. He wants to know from an agency perspective, where are we? Great strides at NGA over the past couple of years to create that whole of enterprise perspective, both with the creation of the office of the CISO, the Cybersecurity Office, but also sort of from a portfolio perspective, now the CISO directing execution of the cybersecurity budget that previously was in between 6 and 12 different buckets, as you would think, as you would call it. So I think that enterprise perspective is huge to be able to bring solutions that worked in one place to bear on another challenge. Can I roll back real quick to technology, just because I was intrigued by that? I was thinking about a couple different things. Hugely invested in automation. And so very excited about the increasing sophistication of automation for all different sort of capabilities. We talked about the cybersecurity workforce challenges. Automation is one of the solutions to the cybersecurity workforce challenge. Increasing automation can help be a force multiplier for our capabilities, from our defense capabilities, or even from our sort of governance, risk, and compliance. Increased automation there scales in a way that a person in a seat doesn't. But I also want to just caution us when we think about technologies. It's something I say to NGA leadership a lot, so I figured I should say it here as well. I'm also trying to get them to understand that security is not something that you buy. Security is something you do, because leadership at that level often wants to know, what can I buy you? What thing, what off the shelf, what rack server what appliance can I get you? And we have a generous budget. I can't talk about it like you can, so I'm a little jealous, but we have a generous budget. What we do, the integration, the processes, the people, those kinds of things is as important to our security posture as what our strategic partners can offer us. So I know that's a little bit of blaspheming. Sorry, y'all.
All right, Lauren.
Yeah, I'd love to touch, I'm going to follow Matt's example. I'm going to touch on both of those. So I think from the enterprise perspective, it's essential, not only for the visibility and strategic way that these gentlemen have already put out, but I think for accountability. Because, I remember back to my last tour, my last job in the Navy was providing cyber training to the ships, the carrier strike groups and amphibious readiness groups that were going out on deployment to ensure they'd be successful for certifications and most importantly have a successful deployment. And I will tell you that it is impossible to get sailors to care about cybersecurity and consider whether or not they're charging their iPhones on a nipper tower and then plugging into a sipper tower, et cetera, unless the CO of the ship cares. Right? You're not actually going to get the people that are operating, the end users, and I always used to say the greatest threat to the Navy network is the uninformed or careless end user, right? And we're not going to get those individuals to buy in and to actually care until there's actual accountability, and that's going to come from the top down, and we need that buy-in from the executive level across all warfare areas and all agencies. As far as the innovative piece, for that I'm actually going to kind of shift to the mobility side, because I think that both the advancements that we've had in security for devices, for operating systems, for applications, for policy management and enforcement, as well as additional, so again, some of the stuff we're working on with DIUX to help these these strategic partners get their technology in, things like phenomenal bone conduction, hands-free, in the mouth, transmit, receive, that can be worn in any environment and whisper and be heard with crystal clarity. I think that with different advancements, again, just even with the basic security though, we're getting to a point where mobility can and must be adopted at broad levels, right? So gone are the days where we're just going to have the senior leadership have their work, BlackBerry, which obviously now needs to be replaced, but the BlackBerry, and they just do, email, and that's pretty much it, calls and email. The next generation of workforce, and if we're gonna really recruit and retain the top talent of the next generation of public sector workers, we're really gonna have to embrace mobile strategy at mass, because, these millennials, right, and beyond, who have grown up on these devices are really going to be most effective to the mission if we're able to equip them with the technology that they're used to using.
Okay, actually, I'm going to shift gears from the technology because I feel a lot of our discussion is going towards policy, because when you start talking about centralizing, start approaching things from an enterprise perspective, that really becomes a policy issue. And so my question is, where do we need to do work on policy to really move the ball forward? Chris, any thoughts there?
I do. So at HHS, we're fortunate to have a CIO in Beth Ann Kaloran. I think she's a bit of a visionary in this area. She has worked with the CIOs of the operating divisions and staff divisions to come up with a unified IT strategic plan that's not just shelfware, but it's tied to the performance objectives of each one of the senior executives in those operating divisions and staff divisions. There's an element, whether it's working on shared services or enterprise IT or cybersecurity, that each of those senior executives has to be held accountable for, and they all signed up for it. So she understands the power of building a coalition, of establishing enterprise services and shared services where it makes sense to do so. And we also are very fortunate to have a secretary in Dr. Tom Price, physician, former congressman who understands the burden that unruly regulation and paperwork can place on a caregiver. So he has instilled in the department this attitude that we are going to focus on and deliver policies that are meaningful, that cause positive change, and get rid of or retire policies that prove burdensome or redundant, or just don't add value to the delivery of IT services. My description of the operating divisions, every one of those, from the FDA to NIH, their core mission is centered on IT. So we've got to get that right.
So Mitchell, this is your area, policy. Where does that work need to be done?
Well, I think that, is this coming across? I think that we need to, one, strengthen the role of the CIO in order to be able to ensure that there's enterprise management of IT across the infrastructure. So in places where and the reality is this is beyond, I think this is beyond just speed and agility to achieve a particular objective, but to be able to achieve a management of IT across the broad budgetary planning cycles, so that we can actually plan for the migration of technology in a way that supports security. In addition, we need to essentially, from a cybersecurity risk management perspective, achieve an implementation of the risk management framework that currently is being employed across the federal government, aligned with the cybersecurity framework recognized in the administration's executive order on strengthening cybersecurity, that ultimately enables the CISO of the department and the organization exercising the risk executive function for the federal departments to have confidence that decision making is being made at lower levels consistent with the risk tolerance being set at the level of the risk executive function.
Okay, good. Actually, I think I do want to give time for questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. Any questions? We have one here, and then next we'll come up here.
Hello, my name is Max Kimmel. I've got a quick question regarding cloud. I haven't heard it this morning yet, or maybe lightly touched upon. So here's the question. How are you guys going to integrate, to use, I guess, Dennis's word, how are you going to integrate the cloud into your own environment so you can maintain the speed and agility of your organization, but yet also be able to deliver the higher demand on the network, the higher demand on the application, and obviously the increase in the endpoint devices tying into this environment?
Yeah, so cloud, Matt, did you want to?
Sure, I'll take that. Or I'll start on it anyway. We are all in on cloud, which is what Deputy Director Gordon, now PDD&I Gordon, directed about 2 years ago, that we are all in on cloud. And what I mean by that is we are an active participant in the C2S cloud for the intelligence community on the high side. We are to be a service provider for the secret C2S cloud, soon to be stood up. I think in November is the go live date, and a huge consumer of commercial cloud services on the low side, the unclassified domain. Actually, we are actually in the commercial cloud, AWS commercial east-west, rather than even in GovCloud, because of the availability of tools to us and our concepts for building low and moving high, and again, outreach to partners in non-traditional spaces. Each of those clouds is a shared responsibility model. We've got tightly integrated, talk about integration, tightly integrated security services that capitalize on what's available from a cloud service provider. Things like AWS config and some of the Elasticsearch tools that are available are part of our security stack. But we have our own virtual security stack as well to protect our boundary, source encrypting our own data so that we don't have to use a cloud service provider's key management solutions, those kinds of things. But so we've found a way, I believe, to make the shared responsibility work for us to achieve the outcomes we're targeting.
Okay, our next question will be right here in the third row. But meanwhile, any other thoughts on cloud?
Yeah, I just want to say, in addition to the improving the baseline of the computers and regionalizing firewalls, the cloud becomes a third area of achieving enterprise computing for the department. So I would say we're all in too. Ultimately, there is a complex integration challenge occurring between, because we're really trying to use off-prem cloud services. Ultimately, that winds up bringing the external environment into the internal, logically, of your networked environment. So working through the details of, one, how we're going to provide CSSP, cybersecurity service provider services that actually reach out into the cloud environment, and how we're going to be able to essentially protect this external environment that's now interior through a common access point, are the kinds of challenges that we're trying to nug through. But it is a complex problem, but one I think that the department is taking on.
Okay, great. So our next question, yeah.
Good morning. This question is for Matt. Could you please expound more on your ATO in a day concept, please?
Sure. The ATO in a day concept is to address the pain point that was described earlier, that decisions reached through the risk management framework take too long. They take too long and they take too much paper. And so we've targeted reducing the time for an authorization decision in ATO to anywhere from where it was 9 to 12 months down to our target is, of course, a day. That's a stretch goal. Our biggest achievement to date is an ATO in 5 days. And the way that works is it's something I often describe as the easy pass. To go through the easy pass lanes to get here, I first went online, I registered my car, I got a transponder, I tied it to a bank account, I got it in the mail, I put the stickies on and I stuck it on my car and I fly. So there's a set of conditions that apply to capabilities that can go through the ATO, accelerated ATO process. They have to be built on our platform as a service. They have to take advantage of our DevOps security stack, which does code quality, dependency checks, static and dynamic code assessment for vulnerabilities, for quality code. And then it has to go through this promotion path in this specific environment. Doing each of those steps, there are automated control gates where for example, if your code is of a sufficient quality or with lower stratified kind of vulnerabilities, you're automatically promoted into operations with an authorization decision. where we want to continue to take this is not just those code pieces, algorithms, capabilities, those analytics, those discrete pieces, but sort of even on a more bigger system basis. We're working real hard right now on automated BOE, that's the body of evidence, the system security plan, the security requirements traceability matrix, those kinds of things. A lot of that is machine readable if you set out to do it. And so we are taking configuration information from our components on a system or SPID kind of basis and creating an XML-based document that's human and machine readable and can be traded with our IC partners to increase reciprocity. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing there. Customers are extremely happy when we can start to finish do something in a couple of weeks.
Okay, I think we're getting close. Do we have time for one more question? Sorry, you just want to get this one last question, then we need to.
Mr. Blumenauer, one again, this has to do with health. I'm vetted, so I use the term program person. And I have not heard that term used, and I'm hearing CIO. I know what a CIO is. The question for you is, does the program person still exist?
Well, I'm a 28-year veteran of the Navy myself, enlisted an officer. We don't use the word program person at Health and Human Services. We partner with Defense Health Agency and other military health agencies to ensure that the cybersecurity surrounding the military health record, whether it exists in DoD, VA, or HHS, have a certain common standard of protections, and that we notify each other. We work together to inform the partners if there are certain threats. But we are working together to protect your health information, and I want to thank you for your service.
Okay, well, I think we are out of time, and it's actually time for our networking break. And so, Christina, what time do we come back from our networking break? 10:05. So this is going to be a quick networking break, so please go get refreshed and come back, and we'll continue with the program. And please join me in thanking our panelists.